do you want to learn the dead language? You're a wee bit daft. You're not even Scottish, for crying out loud. In today's video, I'm going to give you 4 reasons why you should learn Gaelic, especially if you have Scottish ancestry like me. Fáilte is Mr. Carl. This is my lingo kingdom, where I talk about learning the languages of the Isles, Cumbraig, Nihongo, and Gaelic. You don't have to have Scottish ancestry, of course, to learn Gaelic, but you run into people online and in person who have this kind of thought that, Gaelic is dying out and you shouldn't learn it because why would you bother learning that? You can't really use it, And it's like, well, that assumes that the only reason you should learn language is for some insanely utilitarian purpose. And I really disagree with that. And so the first reason that I want to give you for learning Gaelic is history. Gaelic has played a huge role in creating Scotland as we know it today. I've never been to Scotland before. I really want to go, planning on doing it, but I know, especially from the research that I've done and the more I learn about Gaelic and the more I learn about Scottish history, how important all the languages in Scotland have played a role in its history. That includes the Old Pictish language, which was a Brythonic language, the kind of more southern Brythonic language, like kind of Old Brythonic, which was more related to Welsh, that was spoken in like Strathclyde and Eachdraidh Ogledd, the Old North. And you've got the Old English that folks spoke in Northumbria. Like you've got all these different languages in addition to Gaelic. You've got Norn, you've got Scots, you've got all these languages, and they're all part of the history of Scotland. And so if you're interested in that kind of history, why wouldn't you want to learn Gaelic? It's like stepping back in time. And I think that is really cool as someone who does have Scottish ancestry and also someone who is just a history buff. And related to that is my second reason, which is Scottish culture and Scottish heritage. Scottish culture is beloved by many, even people who aren't Scottish, and you've also got so many people across the world who are part of the Scottish diaspora, all the folks in other parts of the English-speaking world, the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all that kind of stuff. People like me who, look back to this land where some of their ancestors came from and think, wow, that is so cool, I want to learn more about that. And one of the ways that you can learn about that part of your identity is through its language. Now, of course, it's not part of your ultimate eternal identity. God distributed people throughout all the earth, and we have all these unique cultures and languages, and I just think that is so cool. And it's part of something that I can look at and take part in and say, yeah, this is something that is part of my own historical background and cultural background. Third reason why I think Gaelic should still be learned today is curiosity. It's okay to just like it, all right? You can just learn Gaelic if you like it. There's no rule that says you can't. I met this, in one of these Facebook groups, I met this guy from Israel who just was learning Gaelic. He has no connection to Scotland. I don't even know if he'd even been to Scotland, I don't know. But he didn't have any Scottish ancestry. He was just a Jewish guy in Israel, and he was just like, yeah, I love this, I want to learn this language. And you can do that too, I think it's really cool when that happens. The fourth thing is just the reality of the way things are. And that is that Gaelic is not a dead language, okay? People call it a dead language, it ain't. It ain't no dead language. Latin is a dead language, okay? Gaelic is endangered, but it ain't dead, all right? We do have 2 examples that we can look at for language revitalization, and those kind of give me hope for what could be the future of Gaelic if we continue to have more people become interested in it, like me, hopefully like you, so that we can keep Gaelic from becoming an extinct language, all right? And those 2 examples are first Hebrew and then Welsh. Now, Hebrew is fairly well known, but I think it's the most successful language revitalization that there's ever been. It all started with the Zionist movement in the 1800s and Eliezer ben Yehuda. He moved back to his ancestral homeland of Israel, and he was so keen on making sure that the Jewish people, when they were able to come back to their land, they would have their ancestral tongue back again as well, that he raised his son to only speak Hebrew and wouldn't let anybody speak any other language to him. And so his son was like the first native speaker of Hebrew in like over 1,000 years. And then when you had more and more people make Aliyah or move back to Israel, before and after World War II, you've got all these different immigrants from all these different countries who have lost their ancestral language and they need to have some kind of way to communicate to one another as they're forming this new country. And so what do? They all learn Hebrew so that they can all talk to one another. Now you have millions of native speakers of Hebrew in Israel right now. It's like this amazing success story of this language. Now the second thing I want to talk about is a lot closer to Scotland and a lot more related to Gaelic, and that is Cymraeg, or Welsh. Just like Gaelic was kind of suppressed hundreds of years ago, the same thing happened in Wales, and Welsh was also suppressed, and it was like not allowed to be spoken, it wasn't supposed to be taught. And so a lot of people lost the ability to speak Welsh. And then in the 20th century, people recognized its decline, and they realized they needed to save the language, so they introduced legislation, and they made Cymraeg mandatory in schools. And decades later, now you've got 20% of the population who speak Welsh, whereas before that, it had been a lot less than that. And the Welsh government has even made it a goal to have 1 million Welsh speakers by the year 2050. It's, of course, not nearly as successful as Hebrew, because everybody in Wales already speaks English as well, but you've got a lot of people in Wales who are bilingual. Some of them who acquired Welsh through schools, and some of whom learned Welsh as their native language, and then English is their L2, or their second language. It is my hope that the Gaelic revival in Scotland would be separated from politics, because right now it's kind of like if you support the revitalization of Gaelic, then that means you belong to a certain political movement. And as an American who's never been there and doesn't really care much about the politics, I'm much more like, no, everybody in Scotland, no matter your politics, hopefully should be, ideally involved in like saving this ancestral language. Like, we already lost Pictish, that's already extinct. We don't want to lose Gaelic too. So those are the 4 reasons why I think people should learn Gaelic, especially if you've got some Scottish ancestry and you want to tap into that. So mash that like button if you agree that Gaelic should make a comeback, and let me know in the comments if you have thoughts about the issues, especially if you're from Scotland and you have a positive or a negative experience with Gaelic, or you have a family member who grew up being a native speaker, anything like that. I would love to hear about it. Let me know down in the comments. And if you are learning Gaelic like me, or you're interested in learning Gaelic, then you can watch this video to see how I am doing it. All right? Mór an tang, Chiri an Drasta.